You're listening to the Catholic Wives Desiring Peace podcast. Today's episode, we'll be talking about when to turn the other cheek. Are you a Catholic wife grappling with challenging in-laws? The Catholic Wives Desiring Peace podcast is your sanctuary for navigating the sometimes stormy seas of life with in-laws while being validated for what you've experienced. Join me, your host, Miriam Susan, a Catholic wife who's weathered nearly 3 decades of in-law drama, as we tackle the tough issues you're dealing with head on. Hi, Miriam Susan here. I'm so glad that you're listening today because today's topic is one that can be kind of triggering, and this scripture was very triggering to me until just a week or so ago. And which one am I talking about? I am talking about Matthew chapter 5, verses 38 through 42, if you want to get the whole context. And this is all about turning the other cheek. I'm going to read to you these scriptures from the New Revised Standard Version, the Catholic edition, starting with Matthew chapter 5, verse 38. You have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, do not resist an evildoer. But if anyone strikes you on the right cheek, turn the other also. And if anyone wants to sue you and take your coat, give your cloak as well. And if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go also the 2nd mile. Give to everyone who begs from you, and do not refuse anyone who wants to borrow from you. Now, these verses feel kind of prickly a bit, don't they? At least they did for me until I heard one of our local bishops in our archdiocese. He spoke at the confirmation mass at our parish, and he talked about turning the other cheek. Now, to me, as a layperson and a reasonably new Catholic, I kind of took it as if somebody punches you in the face, you turn and let them punch you on the other side. And the bishop was very clear. He said, this scripture does not mean that you are to endure abuse. Boom. Mind blown. That was my brain exploding. He elaborated on this scripture and he said, what this scripture is actually talking about is if somebody strikes you in any way, or in the other cases of the examples, if anybody wants to sue you and take your coat, if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, he said that turning the other cheek is not about standing there and continuing to be abused by somebody, but to not retaliate in kind. I had never, ever heard of that interpretation of these scriptures. I had always kind of seen it as, well, Jesus endured a whole lot. And when they struck him on all sides, right? And he just endured it. But what our bishop shared was that, no, it's not about standing there and being somebody's doormat, being somebody's punching bag who is being abusive. It's about walking away, about not retaliating, about not taking revenge, about not doing to them what they have done to you. Like, it's not an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. It's not, okay, well, they did this to me, so I'm going to do it right back. No, it's to turn and walk away and to leave the situation basically with your Catholic witness intact. And this is, like I said, just fascinating to me because I had never heard this. And how many times have we been told, or our husbands have been told by supposedly well-meaning family or friends or acquaintances who say, but it's your mom. Just turn the other cheek. That's just how she is. That's just how he is. You just gotta love her. You just gotta love him. But that's not what Jesus was talking about. You see, Jesus doesn't want us to be abused. Jesus doesn't call us to be doormats. Jesus doesn't want us to stay in situations where we are being hurt over and over and over again. Now, he doesn't want us to retaliate because that's not right. That's sinful. But gosh, when we take a blow from someone, in this case, in my context of my podcast, your toxic in-laws, if you take a blow and just decide, you know what, I'm not going to engage, I'm just going to put some distance between me and my in-laws. That's what Jesus was telling us to do. I wanted to share this revelatory explanation of these verses to you so that you can not feel burdened by what Jesus said anymore. Jesus didn't come to burden us. He came to set us free. And what an amazing freedom we can have in knowing what he really meant when he said to turn the other cheek, to not retaliate. Because Jesus knows in our hearts, we want an eye for an eye. We want tooth for a tooth. If someone hurts us, most of the time, we're going to want to do the same thing back to them. They'll get what's coming for them, kind of thing. But that's not Jesus, is it? Jesus is kind and compassionate and caring, and he knows what it was like. He knows what it's like to suffer. He knows what it's like to be abused. And yet he didn't retaliate. He didn't fight back. I think about Jesus being arrested in the garden and Peter in his passion cutting off one of the soldiers' ears. And instead of Jesus saying, good for you, he had it coming, he's arresting me and it's not fair, what did Jesus do? He healed him. He healed the man who was injured by someone who's supposed to be one of Jesus' closest followers, who should have known better, but in his humanness acted out thinking an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. So this is going to be a bit of a shorter episode because I just want you to really meditate on this verse and really think about how different of a meaning it is to not take this as, okay, well, if somebody hurts you, guess what? You just got to stand there and let them hurt you some more, because that's not the meaning. Totally blew me away. I hope that this is a lightening of the burden that may have been on your shoulders, thinking, gosh, well, I mean, Jesus just endured. He just stood there and got hit back and forth. But no, it's all about not fighting back. Doesn't mean you can't protect yourself. It doesn't mean you can't decide, I've had enough and I'm walking away from this relationship. It doesn't mean that you have to be your in-laws' doormat daughter-in-law, and that your husband has to be his parents' punching bag. That's not what God is calling you to do. He just doesn't want you to fight back in anger, in a spirit of vengeance towards those who hurt you. He just wants you to walk away and let it be, and let them face the consequences for their sin without you getting drawn up in whatever sin you might get drawn up into, acting out in your humanness, in your flesh, in your desire to get back. I hope this is life-changing for you. I hope it opens your eyes and lifts a burden from your heart and gives you a sense of peace, knowing that Jesus sees what you're going through. He does. And he doesn't expect you to be a doormat, a punching bag, and a near occasion of sin for your in-laws. He doesn't want that. He doesn't want that for you or for them. So I pray that you would take some time, read through this. Again, it's in the Gospel according to St. Matthew, chapter 5, verses 38 through 42, if you want the whole section. And the title is Concerning Retaliation. That's what it says. And maybe it's because my background is in the Protestant faith, but gosh, this was huge for me, and I hope it has been for you too. Go in peace. Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of the Catholic Wives Desiring Peace podcast. I have a free gift for you that I would love for you to get. It is my free scripts for toxic in-laws. It's a little PDF that you can use to give you some examples of how to speak to your in-laws about certain issues. I'd love to give it to you absolutely free. So if you head to desiringpeace.com/gift, it will be there waiting for you. Just enter your name and email so you can start using it for inspiration on how to talk with your toxic in-laws. Again, thanks so much for tuning in. Go to desiringpeace.com/gift to claim your gift now. Disclaimer. All content and information on this podcast and our website, including our programs, products, and/or services, is for information and educational purposes only and does not constitute professional medical, psychiatric, or mental health advice of any kind, and does not establish any kind of professional client relationship by your listening to this podcast or use of my website. A professional client relationship with you is only formed after we have expressly entered into a written agreement with you that you have signed, including our fee structure and other terms to work with you in a specific matter. Although we strive to provide accurate general information, the information presented here is not a substitute for any kind of professional advice, and you should not rely solely on this information. Always consult a professional in the area for your particular needs and circumstances prior to making any professional, medical, or mental health related decisions.